Good morning, folks. It's Sid here from Border Archery. Lovely morning, but it's early. It's about 1 degree C. It's cold. Anyway, I wanted to try and introduce probably one of the smallest products that we make. Okay, well, we've started making. Okay, tiny little thing. Okay, but I hope it'll be very good for the Barebow community. When you look at the different aspects of archery, if you look at the full Olympic freestyle target, all the way through to horseback archery, flight, and all the other different disciplines, when you look at all those different disciplines, you learn a lot about archery. And one of the things that's missing in Barebow is a good solid understanding on tiller. Now, one of the main things that's available in Olympic style archery is the long rod, and the long rod is an absolutely invaluable tool for watching tiller. Now, what you're basically looking to do is to try and maintain the relationship of the vertical riser with the horizontal arrow, except that can come in Barebow at some cost. Now, when you look at target archery, freestyle recurve, for example, what you're looking to do is you're looking to, as you pull the bow back, you're looking to stop the long rod from rising or the long rod from dropping as you pull the bow back, which happens because of a tiller issue, okay? And the riser will tip back or forwards, and that will mean that the long rod drops or rises. Now, it's particularly important for shorter risers because you can't really see the riser tip that easily, but a 32-inch arrow will help you see that. The longer the arrow, the more the movement for 1 degree of change. But the other advantage to the long rod is when you're looking at the riser in terms of the riser quality, and then the setup of the riser in terms of the riser, in terms of the setup quality. Sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do this video in 2 parts and explain the difference between having, or how to check if your bow's on plane and the repercussions of it, and then the main part, which is how we can use this for Barebow and why it works. Okay. So first off, I said we'd try and cover the bow being on plane. Okay. So let's imagine that both of the pockets of the riser are actually at an angle, right? They're cut off of square. Now, if you've got what we would class as a poor and cheap design, where the pockets are in line with the throat, so this is a deflex design. So an inline design is where the grip is back here somewhere, so it's in line. Then having a bow that's on plane isn't quite as important, but deflex is forgiving, so it's something that you want. It's only really forgiving if it's in line with the bow. Now, there is a manufacturer out there that has been putting the grips off center line, which I don't understand, okay, but variety is the spice of life. So what on plane means is that if you look at the riser, but the bow itself, i.e. the limbs and the string, can be at a different angle to the riser. They're not definitely in square with the bow. And the normal way to check that with a CNC'd riser that isn't asymmetrical in the bottom half, because some of them have more meat over one side than others, is you would take 2 arrows and you'd put the arrows up the side of the riser like that, and you check to see that the string is center line. Okay? So if the limbs were rotated out of center, out of straight, out of plane, then the string would sit off center. And that essentially means that the string does not run through the middle of the grip. So imagine if the grip is over here, and when you go to pull the bow back, the bow will then rotate. So when you then release, you'll end up with a torque action happening, and you end up with sporadic answers at the other end of the target, the target end. So, this little gizmo, right? Right now we've got it for the 6.2 internal diameter arrows. Basically fits up inside an arrow shaft. Okay. Now the reason why this is quite important, I've got one on this end. The reason why this is quite important is because what you get to do for barebow in particular, and why a long rod doesn't work for barebow, is you get to screw it into the stabilizer bushing. Now please remember that not all risers have the stabilizer bushing central, another problem, but what you're looking to do is, let's see if we can do this, you're looking to have the string running down the middle of the riser grip, through the middle of the limbs, all the way down through the middle of the bow, and then you're also looking to see that the arrow comes out central up at that end. Yeah, can you see that? Now, what you can also do is, with that arrow on, is you can also check your center shot. Now, I don't have a button on this, so it doesn't really make any odds, but you can also check your center shot to see if your arrow runs down parallel right above this one, or whether it sits out the way the base datum sort of setup tries to indicate. Okay, now you will end up with sporadic answers if that doesn't happen. Now there is a caveat to this, is that you need to make sure that your riser actually has a square and straight stabilizer bushing. Not always the case. Okay, but there's the if I tip that up, there's the answer. So what you want is the string running through the center there, running through, and then the string will run down the middle of the rod there. So if the rod's sitting out like this, so is the grip, right? Which means you've got a bit of a problem. Now, that should not take precedence over a straight tracking limb. Okay, so when you do your, apart from the fact that I've now got a long rod on, when you're checking down, you should have the equal amounts either side, there and there. That's one of the more important checks that you should be doing, but also making sure that when you get the bow back, right, you can look up and down the limb with the string central, that you don't have any bulges at the recurve as the limb tries to escape out sideways because the bow isn't technically straight. Okay, so make sure you're not torquing it with your bow hand, and check both sides to make sure the bow's nice and straight. Okay, and from there you'll be able to check to see that it's then on plane. All right, so that's one aspect of what you can do. Now, you can do that with a long rod. Not all long rods are straight, especially some of the more molded styles. They're not always deadpan straight, but arrows are nice and straight, you know that. There's a big long spigot in there. Now, on this one, what I've actually done, so that we can beat it up a bit, is I've put one of the ferrules, the outserts, overserts, whatever you want to call them, I've put that on there to protect the shaft, whilst it's got, put it in my pocket, whilst that's up inside the shaft. Alright, now this is the reason why it's important for barebow, and this is one of the main things that we instigated with the Tempest. The centre of gravity of the bow, the mass distribution of the bow, the balance of the bow, yeah, is not affected by the long rod, because it's just an arrow shaft that weighs nothing really. It doesn't affect the balance of the bow. If you were to use a long rod, the balance would tip the bow forward, which would change the tiller requirements. Okay, if you've got a bow that tips back, then again putting a long rod on would change the balance of the bow, and this is stuff that advanced target archers understand and they play with and try to get their bow to work right. Now, the relationship between the balance of the bow, the tiller, as well as, I dare say it, the angle that you're shooting at, if you've got a bow that plumb lines, and this is why I fundamentally disagree with all the old school style barebow risers, is that the bottom mass, and any riser that's been recently designed with any bottom mass, is still adhering to an old, out-of-dated, old mode of ruling, whereas what you actually want is equal mass with the centre of pressure where you want it, so that the bow balances square through the pressure point. Okay, so that means you can shoot downhill with the same tiller settings as you can shoot uphill with the same tiller settings. Now, sorry for the sales pitch here, one of the things about the Tempest is it has leading edge amounts of deflex, but it also balances sweet as a nut. Okay, yeah, apart from the fact that it's a slippy plastic grip. Yeah, you see what I mean? So the point about the tiller is that this doesn't add any weight. Now here we go. With an arrow, and this is target archery stuff, right? But this can be now applied to barebow because this doesn't change your tiller settings because it doesn't weigh anything at the front. Okay, so when you put a arrow on, and in this case, just to highlight the point, it's not necessarily this way because your knocking point should be slightly raised so that the arrow is ever so slightly pointing downwards because of the knocking point path. Oh, typical. What we've got is we've got the arrow flat on the shelf. The geese are fighting. Okay, so right now that is deadpan square with the bow. It's not the way you'd have it slightly high at the back, but this is for demonstration purposes. That'll teach me for not having a knocking point, etc., that works properly. Right, so when you pull the bow back, right, if you are, for example, heeling the grip, okay, and you pull it back, you can see the angle difference. Yeah, you can see it. That doesn't, you can see the angle difference. Whereas if I push properly through the bow, there isn't an angle difference. Right? Now, if I run with a crawl, you can see the angle difference. Yeah? So if I ran with a ridiculous all fingers above, the arrow is now pointing upwards. Okay? So the whole point of this is to indicate that grip pressure, now a lot of people will argue with you on the grip pressure, where they push through the grip, because they all say they push it perfectly through the centre. Most of them heel it, most of them are everywhere but. This will show you. Okay, so from a coaching point of view, this makes a lot of sense because you get to see the angle that everything's running at. But the angles change if you change your tiller. So if you're a competitive archer and you know you're going to be shooting at 50 metres, then you can set your tiller to be for 50 metres where the bow is working best. And then if you're shooting indoors, you can change your tiller and shoot that way. Okay, if you're shooting say 18 metres. Okay, but what you can do is you can choose to have the arrow pointing downwards or upwards based on grip pressure. You can see that long rod up and down based on grip pressure. But then also, based on your crawl, you can end up with problems. So you can set it so that the bow is shooting as parallel as possible to your long rod. Okay, now the advantage is, as I say, it doesn't have any mass on the end, so it doesn't affect the balance of the bow. Because if you use a long rod for that, the weight of the long rod itself and the weight that you've got on the end, the insert, etc., the threads that are on the end, will automatically tip your bow down. And with barebow, that's not how you shoot your bow. So you don't want the mass at the end. So by having a small insert that fits inside your arrow shaft, you can use an arrow shaft to do the job. Right now we have 6.2s in stock, and we plan on making them for a 4.2 arrow as well. So you just have to buy the little insert so that you can use one of your existing arrows. And if push comes to desperate shove, you can literally just pull the knock end out of one of your arrows. Take the point off the end to get rid of that weight problem. You've still got the insert, but it's only about like 20 grains or something, right? Take the point out, pull the knock end out, stick it up, screw it onto you, and you can watch your tiller, okay? Based on not a very big problem, all right? Does that all make a bit of sense? Yeah? We're trying to provide you guys with tools so that you can see what your setup's doing. And if you change your tiller, you'll change the way that riser wants to rise or fall, and that'll change everything. If you change how you push through the grip, that'll change everything again. Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show you what effect that happens so that you can help teach other people in your club, or you can do some video learning yourself by watching that rise and fall. Or if you're good enough, you can sit and watch as you pull your bow back. You'll watch the long rod rise, or you'll watch it drop as you're shooting. Okay, so there you go, our little tiller arrow insert. All right, thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, ping them in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer, as I usually do, but other than that, you need to email Carol, C-A-R-O-L, at borderbows.com if you're interested in one or two or three of them, and we'll get them shipped out to you. Thanks for watching.